Hey, namaste. Namaskaram to all our Tatomai listeners. My name is Sudha Jagannathan. I'm on the board of Coalition of Hindus of North America. And Tatomai has been very gracious to host me in the past on topics that of concern to the Hindu community in North America. So today I'm joined with my star public policy intern, Meera Trivedi. Meera, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Namaskar. My name is Meera. I am from New Jersey, Central Jersey, and I am a rising 10th grader. I've been a part of the public policy program for about 2 years now, and I'm now the Associate Director of Public Policy and Research.
Yeah, she is one of our really top public policy interns, and one of the a passion for Meera is to correct the narrative around swastika. And swastika, for everybody who knows about Hinduism, you know that it is a very sacred symbol for Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, and also Native Americans. In fact, swastika is the Hindu name. Because worldwide this is a very revered sign, and different communities call it by different names. It's also very much prevalent in Europe, and in South America, Central America, amongst the native tribes of North America, in Africa, all over the Buddhist countries of Southeast Asia. But in Japan, it's called the manji. In Korea, it's called the won, but we call it swastika. And the world knows about swastika through a narrative of the World War II. And our mission, Meera's mission and my mission, is to correct the narrative that was done during the 1930s onwards, as part of the World War II launching and the use of the symbol, not swastika, but a symbol by the Nazis. The symbol that the Nazis took, it had a German name. It still has the German name. It's called Hakenkreuz, which means the hooked cross. Where did it come from? It is actually found everywhere in Germany, especially in churches. And Nazis knew that the symbol can cause fear and intimidation in people that they wanted to abuse. And so they took that. And our agenda here today, Meera and I are going to talk about why are we talking about swastika to the Indian audience. The reason is that Madras High Court is going to have a hearing sometime later this year about changing the curriculum under the NCERT to make sure it is historically correct. One of our asks, and we are going to submit as part of Coalition of Hindus of North America, which we both are part of. We are a grassroots advocacy organization, and we do a lot of work to make sure Hinduism is represented correctly. And so CoHNA is going to submit a letter to the Madras High Court to make sure the topic of World War II and the symbols mentioned as part of Nazi propaganda and Nazi Holocaust, etc., must refer to the correct symbol as Hitler's hate symbol or Hakenkreuz. Never use the word swastika. That belongs to us, the Hindus, Buddhists, and Jains, and we have not given permission to anyone to use it. So that is the intent of this conversation today. And I'm going to ask Meera a few questions about why is this important, and why is someone young like her who doesn't live in India, that she's taken this on as a mission in her life. So Meera, just give me a little background. Let's share with the audience why swastika is so important to a teenager like you.
Well, swastika has always been the symbol that I've seen outside my door when I walk in my home, or around my home mandir, or around the mandir I go to in my local community. It was the symbol that was drawn on my car when my parents first bought it, and the symbol drawn on my cousin's forehead when he was first born to bless him. This was a symbol widespread in my life. It's a symbol I've seen everywhere. And to hear it used in such a hateful like connotation, and to hear people say that it's a hate symbol and should be called out and not used anymore really hurt me deeply. I was in 8th grade when this first happened. It was around the end of the year, so we were learning about World War II when my teacher called Hitler's hate symbol the swastika. She said it's a symbol a lot of ancient traditions he still use, but they shouldn't because it's a hate symbol now. And that really sat with me because that symbol that I see in my house, that's not a hate symbol. That's a symbol I see as a prosperous symbol, as an auspicious symbol. And I wanted to correct her. So I go up to her and I tell her, what you're saying is wrong. That's not the swastika, that's the Hakenkreuz. And you know what she tells me? She tells me that, Meera, a lot of students have come up to me and have said this, but this is what students know, this is what parents know, and this is how I will continue to teach it. And there's nothing you can say or do that will change my mind. I was taken aback. So I offered to send her an email after class, giving her a couple links, sharing my own personal story, and hoping that she would change her mind. This happened in another classroom as well, and I did the same thing. When I came back, I did in fact change their minds, but they refused to change the curriculum until I went higher up and I got it changed on the greater district. So then I went up to my guidance counselor thinking she could help me. She was really surprised and open to this concept. Like, she was surprised because she'd never heard it and she was open to helping me. Weeks went by. So many emails were sent, not a single response. So I'm like, okay, if they're not going to listen to me only, I need to get more students who are going to help me out with this process. So I asked my friend, and she says, I would love to help you in this. I think this is an amazing cause. And that night, I go home and I text every single Hindu I know at that school, Hindu and Buddhist. At the end of that week, I end up gathering about 8 Hindu students and 2 Buddhist students to help me fight in the cause. We set up a group chat and we meet over a FaceTime call. We discuss our strategy and all the students write up testimonials. With that, we send those testimonials as well as my email with all the links and explanation to the vice principal and principal. We go up to them at their offices, send multiple emails out to make sure we're heard because we didn't get an email response to the first one. After all that persistence, we finally got one meeting. We got a meeting with my vice principal and we got a meeting with the director of social studies in ELA. And I was so proud, first of all. And I was so nervous going into that meeting. I still remember. I went in with 3 other students and their testimonials, and I gave the main presentation stating why the swastika is different from the Hakenkreuz and why it should be changed in our school's curriculum. And right there and then, he stops and he says, I'm going to change this. I'm going to do it. And after weeks, a year going back and forth on email, during a teacher info meeting, this was brought up and it was changed. And all the teachers were given this information, told to change their curriculums and how they teach it. Now we are working on getting that in the student handbook written down.
Fantastic. So is that for the whole school district?
Yes.
Or is it? Okay. Amazing, amazing, Meera. Kudos to you. I mean, it's, I have to say, I always refer to this Swastika campaign as a Bhagiratha Prayatna. You know, the story of Bhagiratha and how after many generations, he took it upon himself to keep the promise that his ancestors had made to bring Ganga down to earth. Right. So the work that you and the other students are doing to change this curriculum, and the change is really to say the Nazi hate symbol is not swastika. It is, you can call it either Nazi hate symbol, just like that, or call it Hakenkreuz, because all of these things have their own names, right? And there is no need to refer it to as swastika. So amazing work, amazing work. Also want to say the importance of this. Do you want to speak to a little bit to the legislative efforts happening around the U.S. To condemn swastika as a hate symbol? If you can take it on.
Totally. I know there was a piece of legislation in Virginia that was going to kind of ban the swastika or make it more as a hate symbol in the legislation and seen as a hate symbol by all law enforcement. Same thing in New Jersey, sorry, not New Jersey, New York, where they had a piece of legislation that was going to teach swastika as a hate symbol all across the New York school districts.
Yeah, I think there was also, I think the new part of New York was students who saw the symbol and calling it swastika symbol. If they saw it, they could call 911. 911 is a call you launch to get police and law enforcement in a very critical situation. So New York, I believe, was going to make even seeing a swastika somewhere a 911 emergency, right? That would have been atrocious. And a few years ago in California, a Jewish lawmaker brought a bill to condemn swastika, the noose, and the burning cross, I think, as hate symbols. And the Hindu community got engaged, and Coalition of Hindus of North America, along with others, educated the lawmaker and entire California legislature about the sacredness of swastika to 2 billion Hindus, Buddhists, and Jains. And what I found it so surprising, Meera, was that only 3 people in California legislature, right? 40 senators and 80 assembly members, only 3 of them knew that the swastika was a sacred symbol to half the world. The others had only learned and heard about the Nazi the symbol. And so we were able to change the minds on it. And they actually did not remove the word swastika from the bill, but they qualified it by saying the Hindus, the Buddhists, and people who use it for religious purposes can continue to use swastika. And so that way we are able to use it during our big festivals like Diwali, because everywhere on doors and everything we draw the big swastika. So we are allowed to use it for religious purposes in California. And in Virginia, they actually made a lot more changes to the hate symbols bill and really put Nazi Hakenkreuz in it. It's a big win for global Hindus to have that. But in Canada, do you know about what happened in Canada? Do you want to speak about it? Yeah.
In Canada, Brunei Brit and I think the Israel embassy both started referring to that symbol as the Hakenkreuz, the Nazi Hakenkreuz, instead of the swastika. And they have a whole page on their website explaining the difference between the two.
So that is a lot of work that the Coalition of Hindus of North America, we have to take a pat on our shoulders, Meera, that the Canada team did a terrific job of partnering with the Jewish community and talking to them about the facts of the situation and that Hitler never used the word swastika. His Mein Kampf and all of his writings always referred to Hakenkreuz. Even the New York Times and other media at that time, during Second World War, always called even the Nazis as Hakenkreuzlers, right? The ones who use Hakenkreuz. And there was, Nazis even had a newsletter called the Hakenkreuz Banner, right? So the word was very much a German word. And until later, but I want to also mention something about Canada. Canada has a piece of legislation that is, I think, is passing through the parliament. It's not fully a law, which started off with the swastika in it, but the Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, and groups worked very hard to convince the lawmakers to remove the word swastika altogether from that bill, C9. Right? It also provided protection for temples and all that. But that's a major, major win for the Hindu community fighting for recognition of historical facts. So maybe we can just talk a little bit about what happened. How did this misrepresentation happen? Do you want to address that?
Yeah, so I think it was Um, it was misused in a newsletter, I think maybe by the New York Times, and it was called the swastika instead of the Hakenkreuz, even though in prior issues the New York Times had referred to it as the Hakenkreuz.
Very nice. Yeah. So I want to say, give a little factoid about New York Times, major news media of the U.S. But during Second World War, the Berlin chief was a Nazi. So that was an American who was a Nazi. And it took a long time for New York Times to change the story about the Nazis and even acknowledge the Jewish Holocaust. Remember, you know, the Jews were being killed by Hitler, and New York Times held back those stories for reasons of their own. But their bureau chief in Berlin was a Nazi. And I want to let you know that many American Nazis were there at that time during Second World War. A lot of Americans were fascinated with the ideology of Hitler. And there is a great black and white, very chilling movie. I would ask everybody to check it out. It's called A Night at the Garden, right? And that Night at the Garden is about American Nazis celebrating Nazism, and the ones protesting were the Jews. And the New York police was protecting the Nazis from the Jews. Right, so there's a lot of history on all of this, but we are now taking it on. And then the other thing is that right around the time when they saw the war was changing, right? The Nazis were losing. The church decided to put some distance between themselves and the Nazis, because I want to say Pope Francis has opened up the archives of the Second World War, and a lot of scholars are now combing through all of this. So more history will come out. But the one history we should know is that the church, the Vatican, stood with the Nazis. Individual priests in Germany helped a lot of Jews to escape, but that was not the stance of the church. So as the tide of war was changing for the Nazis, the church also wanted to put some distance between them and their collusion with the Nazis, and started to use the word swastika. So at that time, let's remember, the war ended in 1945. India gained independence in 1947. Indians were not looking at what was going on across the world in terms of narratives that would harm us for about a century, right? Until now, which is when we have Meera, we have other young students who are saying, no more. No more. You're not going to use our symbol to abuse us. You're going to use the right terminology when it comes to Hitler. And Hitler never used the word swastika. He never appropriated a Hindu symbol. Why would he? He hated brown people. He hated Indians. He did not want Britain to give independence to India. Why would he take anything from India? Never. So that is a long time of narratives. The academics writing about swastika as a Nazi symbol, media always referring to this. And today in America, what do we see? We see the mayor of New York, even the governor of New York, the leaders of major universities, when they refer to, or when they condemn anti-Semitism, they refer to swastika, which is wrong. So when somebody uses the word swastika, let's talk about the harms. What do you think are some of the biggest harms that when they use the word swastika and not the correct terminology?
First off, swastika is also a name. That's the name of a person. Like, we know someone named Swastika, she's a part of CoHNA, and that's harming her when you're using her name as like naming that symbol. And then you're also saying that the symbol that these Hindus, Buddhists, and Jains use is hateful, and that their religion is hateful in a way, and you're in a way also calling them a Nazi and telling them that they're perpetuating hate when they're not. They're simply worshiping, like they're using their religious symbol, and it had nothing to do with Hitler, and Hitler never used it, and we need to keep that in mind.
Yeah. So the main points are Hitler never used the word swastika. Mm-hmm. It's always Hakenkreuz. and Hitler did not appropriate anything from India or Hindus. I think those are the main points. And I also want to say, anytime anyone uses the word swastika instead of Hitler's hate symbol or Hakenkreuz, we are giving power to Hitler. We are giving more power to Hitler to come out of his grave and abuse 2 billion new people. I don't think that is right. So anyone who uses the word swastika inappropriately, and I would call out all the journalists in India, right? The really powerful voices of Palki Sharma and Smita Prakash and CNN 18 journalists and all across India. You have the power in your hands to change this narrative for the entire world, and you have a responsibility to make that change happen. First of all, the Hindu diaspora is being attacked as Nazis. And through this legislation, it impacts us as abusive, oppressive people who killed the Romas, the LGBTQ, and the Jews. When India and the Hindus are the only country and people who have always provided safety and sanctuary to the Jews, and we have our own methods of honoring trans people and LGBTQ. So we don't want to take any burden from the Nazis and the Europeans and Hitler for crimes they committed. The other thing is that in World War II, India sent 2 million soldiers, right? And those soldiers gave their lives to a war that had nothing to do with them. It's because of the Indian soldiers that the Allied forces won World War II. And that the biggest advantage for America and Britain was that 2 million Indian soldiers meant that fewer young men from America and Britain had to go fight the wars, right? It was the Indian soldiers who stopped Nazi Rommel, the General Rommel, from capturing Suez Canal and cutting off the supply chains of Britain. So our contributions to the war are significant against the Nazis. So we are not Nazis. We are not deserving of being aligned with anything Nazi at all. In fact, we reject all of that, and we ask all academic scholars in India and abroad and media personalities to always refer to the swastika as Hakenkreuz or Nazi symbol. Now, Meera, amongst your other students too, we have had a few more successes, right? When students speak, the schools listen. When parents speak, they don't. Let's talk about one more example.
Yes, so there was this example in Maryland where these two girls named Priya and Saisha spoke up to their school board and they demanded that they use the correct terminology. After much back and forth, they actually got a win over there and they got an email back saying that this will be officially amended in their school and in writing.
Excellent. Excellent. So that's why I'm saying we are all counting on youth like you to make the change happen, because this is honestly the last generation and the last opportunity to fix a historical wrong, correct?
Yeah.
Because after this, the bad narrative becomes truth, and we forget the what the real truth is, that Swastika belongs to the Hindus, Buddhists, and Jains. It has nothing to do with Nazism and nothing to do with the Hindu religion, and people should own it in Germany or Europe, because that's where it belongs. One other thing I wanted to ask you is about CoHNA's work trying to publicize the facts about Swastika. You want to talk about the silence of Swastika, Manji movie, a little bit?
Yeah. So CoHNA has worked a lot to help stop the narrative that swastika is a hate symbol. They've worked with people like TK Nakagaki, who published a book on this. They got into search like things where sometimes I think it was either Gemini or ChatGPT reference them as one of their sources when referring to swastika and that hate symbol and how it's used in Hinduism. That's the kind of change that CoHNA is trying to bring about, because how many people really use AI and ChatGPT? So many. So if you can get this change and get them to quote CoHNA and CoHNA resources, then you're really changing it for so many more people and opening them up to your resources and the truth in a way.
Yeah. So I would encourage everybody to check out on YouTube. There is a CoHNA a documentary created with AKTK in India, and it's called The Silence of Swastika. It gives you the history of swastika and what happened during Second World War, etc. It might be a little hard for some people. And when we talk about this, remember, we are not maligning any other religion. We are just saying, leave us alone. We had nothing to do with the Nazism, and we refused to be scapegoated for something we had not, we had no, hand in. So the documentary should be a must, I think, and I'm not sure if a letter to the High Court will include that as a reference. I hope they do, because schools should use that to teach students about it. So as we wrap up, Meera, I just wanted to ask you, what would you advise the students in India to do about reclaiming swastika?
Not just the students in India, but the students everywhere in the world. You have the power to make real change. When you speak up, people listen, because you're the future. You're the next generation. You're who's going to be running the world in just a couple years. They listen to you. You are actually in the system, and you have the power to make real change.
And if anyone wants to find out how you did certain things or want more information, how can they reach you?
They can reach me at info@cohna.org. Because I don't want to give out any of my personal
No.
information.
Info@cohna.org is the right
Yeah.
email address to reach out to and find out about resources, how to go
Yes.
about getting your schools to fix your curriculum, how to give talks on swastika, right? And I think we would be happy to help
To help
as
you.
many students and adults to learn about the truth, because at the end of the day, we value truth and truth prevails. So I think that's our last message. So message is really to the students worldwide and to journalists everywhere. Especially in India, you do hold the power to change the narrative, starting in India, about Nazi Hakenkreuz, so the Nazi hate symbol. And let's continue to revere our sacred symbol, Swastika. So, Swasti to everybody. Thank you all. Thank you, Meera, for joining. I really appreciated this conversation. Great.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.